rules of treatment are as follows. For external use, you need to use only lukewarm water to wash away the dirt. All the rest is harmful. Food and drink for such patients should be easily digestible, simple, but at the same time nutritious, strengthening. Sour, salty, spices and alcoholic beverages. The use of water is as follows. On the first day, take a steam bath for head and put on a Spanish cloak. On the second day, a foot steam bath and bottom wrap. On the third, in the morning, again a Spanish cloak, and in the evening, a short wrap. The fourth day is rest. The fifth day, stay in bed, and after 2 hours do cold washes of the whole body. If anything gets in the way, stay in bed, then you can wash the whole body with cold water in the morning, afternoon and evening without this. Rum every time after washing, make movements or work. Strength and frequency of water applications decreases depending on the decrease in lichen, i.e. from the cessation of effusions and excretion of unclean juices from the inside out and from the formation of new skin. There is one point I must make here. The division of lichens into wet and dry does not make any difference to their treatment. In my opinion, both. Another name means the same thing. Dry lichens are those that are less wet, so that the liquid on the surface of the skin dries up and turns into a scab, while wet are called strongly weeping, which are therefore more painful, more dangerous, and with great difficulty heal. The consequences of the lichens driven inside, generally sick, poisonous juices, are very serious. Grave diseases, the immediate consequence, cause slow exhaustion and death, or worse. Madness. One theologian had a regular round spot on his left cheek. This spot represented a solid scab that covers the bare meat and often opens up for a while to exude a few drops of pus. The patient's face was full. On his head he had several small, purulent acne. This patient had already turned to many doctors, took many medications, but everything was to no avail. When I asked if he had hurt himself in any way, he answered in the negative. It formed by itself. About 20 to 30 years ago, many people artificially discovered a source on their hands or feet, a real cloaca, a wound that did not heal, through which the body excreted everything unsuitable for it, all harmful juices. That's why such a place was constantly festering. In this case, strong nature has made itself made a hole for it and covered it with a suitable lid. I ordered this patient to take a steam bath for the head every other day for 2 weeks, and so much the same time a steam foot bath. In addition, he also did a short wrap and a Spanish cloak, so that in a day I had to do 2 to 3 applications of water. Inside, he took an infusion of sage, wormwood and mint, which contributed to a speedy recovery. After a short time, a tender the skin, a sure sign that the excretion and dissolution is already completely over, i.e. water recovery has already arrived. After 3 weeks, it was difficult to tell which cheek had a scab. A 25-year-old girl says, I have a severe rash all over my head, and there are many small sores under my hair. World War II, I have some kind of scales on my ears. If it sometimes subsides, it turns out that there is no skin on the ears. Time I have a severe headache. The eyes are like on fire, and very often a cloudy liquid flows from them. I can't breathe with my nose for a long time. I have such itching and fever on my body that very often I wake up from it. At night. Treatment 1 a week, 2 warm baths of a decoction of oat straw at 37 degrees, with a double change. First 15 minutes in a warm bath, and then 1 minute in cold or washing with cold water. 2. Weekly 2 steam baths for the head from 20 to 25 minutes. 3. Complete washing twice a week. 4. Daily 2 times 25 drops of wormwood tincture for 8 to 10 tablespoons of water. After 4 weeks, the lichen and unhealthy substances in the body were partially eliminated, and 4. Further isolating them and strengthening the body, it was enough to do the same applications of water twice less often. See article, Leaves on the Head. One artisan 40 years old, quite full, says, I have on my hands, excluding my fingers, for 2 years big lichens, in addition, on the thighs, in places on the back and chest. Because of this I cannot sleep at night. In general, my appetite and strength are good. Treatment: 1. Complete washing every night. 2. Weekly 2 warm baths of 35 degrees from oat broth. Straw, lasting half an hour, and every 14 minutes, and at the end of the bath, a full washing. 3. Daily dousing of the upper parts of the body, and immediately after this douche of the knees. After 4 weeks he came to me already completely healthy, to prevent future tense. The return of the disease, I advised to do full washing at night 2 times weekly and once a month. Take a bath according to the above method. To this he remarked to me, if it was not even necessary, I would have continued them all the same in order to remain as vigorous and fresh as now. Leaves on the Head. One peasant woman says, for 2 years now I have had a constant rash on my head, all over my face. She then took away. Increases, then decreases. Many small and large abscesses appear under the hair, from which flow hot liquid. Often I feel itching all over my body. Inside I feel a constant fever. I have already accepted a lot of drugs, but without any results. Hydrotherapy for 6 weeks cured me completely. B. For 3 weeks, I did the following: 1 every week 3 times at night from bed, complete washing. Then go straight to bed. 2 every week she wore a wet shirt soaked in salted water. 3 took a weekly steam bath for the head. For a complete cure and strengthening of the body. For the next 3 weeks, I wore a wet shirt once a week and did 2 to 3 full washing. Migraine. Migraine pain in half of the head occurs mainly in women, but men are also quite common. Suffer from it, especially those who are engaged in mental work a lot and for a long time. Sometimes you can. To hear this kind of consolation from a doctor, don't worry, fools don't get migraines. This disease can easily occur from improper blood flow. Even more often it comes from harmful influences with sides of the stomach and abdomen in general. If the abdomen is generally weakened, if gas often collects, if, finally, bowel movements are irregular, then all these painful phenomena very often affect the head, causing some of its places of pain. Or, incorrectly flowing blood can press especially hard on some place. Often this serious illness begins with the fact that the eyes are covered with a kind of fog. At the same time, some have watery eyes, others darken in their eyes, and it seems to them that they see before them some. Then jumping figures. Migraine especially often appears after illnesses, when the body has not recovered enough. The activity of the organs did not return to normal. Migraines can also be hereditary. Individuals often migraine sufferers usually say that their mother or father suffered the same. Cure this disease. Not difficult. If the migraine is caused by a buildup of gases, and this is, in my opinion, the main reason, then, in this case, it is quite enough to wash the stomach with cold water 2 to 3 times daily for 2 to 3 This simple procedure not only removes gases, but also improves the stool and often everything itself is put in order. The effect will be stronger if you add a little vinegar or salt. If this procedure is not enough, then you can take 2 to 3 baths during 1 week. Moreover, the patient can still drink infusions that destroy gases. An infusion of caraway seeds or dill works great. A worthy attention and some other home remedies. For example, it is good every morning and every evening to take on drops of lavender oil on sugar or eat 6 to 8 juniper berries at different times of the day. Soda powder promotes the release of gases, I agree with that, but it is not a radical remedy. The migraine pencil is now considered the pop plus ultra remedy for migraine. That is beautiful good. A carved piece of wood, into which this wonderful thing, strongly smelling of camphor, is inserted. Root. Evil migraine, as we have seen, is mainly in the abdomen, and suddenly, several times. Run this pencil over your forehead so that everything is already over. Let it help. I do not want to talk. But it would be funny if the patient, instead of setting himself the clyster as prescribed, would douche his ear. Melancholy. One person from overwork developed tinnitus, prolonged heaviness in the head, weakening memory and mental abilities, and a gloomy mood, so that he was forced to give up his studies. Insomnia is often also. Strength and body weight have noticeably decreased. I treated him like this: top douches, back douches, walking on water, 2 wraps and 1 Spanish cloak a week, and inside wormwood drops, partly separately, partly mixed with arnica and yarrow. He attributes a particularly healing effect to these drops. After 2 months, he felt perfectly healthy and capable of work, pep was renewed, and the melancholy was completely past. Body weight increased by 24 pounds. Urinary stones. One gentleman fell ill at a young age, severe pain in the kidneys appeared, and urine stopped flowing. The doctors announced that he had a stone in his bladder and that it could only be removed by surgery, but the patient never dared to do it. One acquaintance advised him to take a sitz bath in the morning, at lunchtime and in the evening from a decoction of field horsetail, and drink a cup of horsetail infusion before each bath. After 36 hours, a stone came out, almost the size of a pine nut. The pains ceased, and this gentleman recovered. Urinary stones. I was very ill for 6 months. I was treated for kidney disease and urinary stones, and also hemorrhoids, which tormented me greatly. None of the 3 doctors who made me feel better could help me. By chance I learned that one of them announced that my illness was incurable. Another advised me to go to Heidelberg and have a stone extraction operation, but I decided it would be better to die at home than in a stranger city. So I didn't do anything. I can assure you that I was passing more than 4 times of urine every day. Bottles of blood. Often at night, when the pain kept me awake, I thought about when my torment would end. Finally, God heard my prayers. I found out about your book, took it out, immediately began treatment, and after 8 days did not feel any pain. My urine became clear, like water. Before it was cloudy. How? Spoiled beer, and now, after 4 weeks, I am cheerful and cheerful, like an 18-year-old boy, although I am already 60 years old. If I wouldn't be ashamed, I would start dancing. If not for your book, I would have been dead for a long time. Doctors. They didn't want to believe that I had completely recovered. Urinary stones, urine sand. It often happens that sand and stones form in the bladder and kidneys. Who has ever seen this? The patient or himself suffered this illness, he knows these terrible pains. Water treatment, effective and without. Painful, and therefore the easiest and best. The first place is occupied in this case by the baths of the decoction of oat straw. Oat straw, if not, you can. But use horsetail or sedge, boil for half an hour and prepare from the broth. Warm bath at about 37 degrees. The patient remains in this bath for an hour and washes himself fresh. Water immediately after leaving it, so that the bath does not weaken it too much. These baths should be taken 3 times a week. It is also helpful to do 2 to 3 short wraps, or apply wet compresses to sore spots instead. Both should be done in bed. They dissolve and excrete stones in the bladder and kidneys. However, one should not forget when this disease about infusions and decoctions. Best of all is a decoction of oats. Boil oats for half an hour and drink 2 daily cups of this broth. An infusion of oat straw, prepared in the same way, works even better. The infusion of horsetail is also good. I will also mention the rose hips, the decoction of which is also a very healing infusion. It only needs to be applied for a longer time. I know from experience that it prevents the formation of new such stones. All the above applications should do in continued 2 to 3 weeks, the next 3 to 4 weeks, half the number of times. One patient, who was being treated according to my instructions, told me that during several weeks came out several hundred pebbles. Another patient suffered so much from urinary stones and sand that sharp pains spread to the legs, and on them many small abscesses formed. At times he felt agonizing throughout his body, tickling, itching and burning. 30 baths throughout the year, Spanish cloak twice a week, infusions. The above herbs, all this cured him completely of this disease. In conclusion, I will say a few words to the younger generation, which so willingly rejects everything old. Because it is outdated and based on prejudice, ignorance, a young generation that is always strives to grab onto everything new. The Creator, with love and wisdom, prepared remedies for all diseases that occur most often including the most severe among them is the described disease, because the number those suffering from it are legion, and the pain from it can sometimes drive to madness. On earth grow, according to him, the will of all kinds of plants that can relieve suffering and heal diseases. Abscesses. Inflammation can form both inside the body and outside. It is always a companion of various jerks. When a fire starts, neighbors come running. If any place on the body becomes inflamed, then neighboring parts will not remain indifferent. An abscess on the toe no larger than a lentil, a grain, and not only the finger hurts, but very often the whole leg. Sometimes the pain spreads throughout body. Anna's thumb hurts badly. Almost nothing is noticeable, the finger is only slightly swollen and got angry. She feels pain not only on the thumb, but also under the arm. Be careful. Soon at you, the whole body will ache. There is something here, the father thinks. Yes, of course, there is something there. Girl pretty. Bandages his finger and waits 3 to 6 days for how it will end. The finger swells, and behind it the whole hand appears. Big abscess, stabbing pain is felt in the finger, in the hand, throughout the body. Much time must have been pass until all the pus is gone and the hand is healed. How did the girl need to treat her finger? As soon as she noticed that the finger on which there was no damage Denny begins to hurt, she had to do as her mother does when she does not want to be on the hearth. Big fire, she extinguishes it or floods it with water. If, apart from the finger, the hand also hurts, then it means that the fire has become larger and enveloped the hand along with the finger. In this case, should you keep your hand under running water to cool and extinguish the fire? In no case. Everything. Evil lies not only in fire, in heat, but also in poisonous juices, which must be dissolved and isolated. Wrap your finger and hand in a cold, wet handkerchief and change it whenever it is made hot. The abscess on the finger was supposed to break through itself, but on the other hand, everything pulled out by wrapping is no longer. Will increase the pus. And this is a big difference. Will the abscess be the size of a hazelnut or a walnut and more? If soreness, ill health spreads to the whole body, then it is necessary to apply daily. Master's cloak, then in a very short time the general condition will improve. One type of abscess is known among the villagers under the name worm on the finger. What is this worm on your finger? Not what other than a large abscess, which must be treated in the above way. Mostly such an abscess happens in people who have a lot of unhealthy juices in their bodies. Therefore, it is necessary to act not only on finger, but also on the whole body. The finger should be wrapped 2 or 3 times with a rag dipped in a decoction of horsetail to prevent damage to the bone, and the hand with a handkerchief twice. Instead of water, it is better to moisten it. Decoction of hay dust or cabbage, wetting must be repeated whenever fever or pain are getting stronger. The whole body needs to be influenced by 1 or 2 short wraps or Spanish cloak. After the first week, you need to do wraps only after 1 or 2 days. With top and bottom pouring over, you need to be careful and use it to strengthen the body only when already enough pus has dissolved and been discharged. As soon as the abscess on the finger is ripe, i.e. turned bluish and soft, you need to immediately open and squeeze it out, without being afraid if blood appears along with pus. This blood should have turned into pus, and therefore it is good to free it from this process then. The healing of the finger is accelerated. There is almost nothing to fear too early opening of an abscess when treating with water. Due to the great purity, when using ointments, such a fear is quite substantiated. Treatment for this kind of abscess can be different. You need to bathe your finger and hand up to the elbow every day 2 to 3 times in a warm bath of hay dust for an hour. Finger, arm and body wraps are the same. Gardener Andre's right thumb is very swollen. The skin came off him and he was a dead piece of meat covered with pus. Bone was visible in many places. The doctor announced that it was necessary to take away hand to save a life. I saw the hand of this patient and thought, Lord, help me save this hand to the poor man. I advised to wrap the finger and the whole hand with a handkerchief dipped in a decoction of hay dust and horsetail. Both herbs are boiled together, changing it 4 to 5 times daily. The sick body was given a short daily wrap and 3 times weekly Spanish cloak. I ordered the sick finger to be washed daily by the week. A solution of alum to wash off the pus. After 4 weeks, the finger and hand were completely healthy. New meat has formed on a healthy bone. And the finger, devoid of only a nail, looked the same as before. The gardener could still study by their own business. After that, he lived for a long time. Abscesses on the legs. A poor worker had an open wound on his leg for many months, the whole of which was finger long and 3 wide. This person, even at the best time of his life, always experienced terrible suffering, and only occasionally could he fall asleep for several hours. He looked very sickly, lethargic. I advised to apply boiled camel hay to the wound and spread it on a rag, like a plaster, over. Put fresh butterbur leaves over the entire leg from ankles to knees and put on a stocking. Change the patch and leaves every morning and evening and, in addition, drink 2 tablespoons of infusion every 2 hours. Camel hay. At the same time, the patient could continue his work. After 2 weeks, almost 2/3 of the wound closed. This man had a fresh, vigorous appearance, did not feel any pain and could sleep well. After 3 weeks the leg was completely healed. Ingested infusion of camel hay is prepared. So, a spoonful of it on a mug of water is boiled for 1 minute, then drained and drunk, as indicated above, with spoons. This infusion reduces heat and has a healing effect on the inside. Urinary incontinence at night. This disease affects mostly adolescents of both sexes, sometimes adults of 20 years or more. You often see advertisements in the newspapers against this disease, but for the most part it is only quackery. Many still use these means or try to heal unfortunate children with rods and ridicule, which of course only increases the evil. I was told that in one institution such sick children were flogged every day before going to bed with rods. Poor children at first did not fall asleep for a long time for fear of the possibility. Repetition of punishments, then they fell asleep in a deep, heavy sleep, and the seizure was repeated. The cause of the disease lies in the weakness of the body. Strengthen it and the disease will pass. I advise such sick children from 8 to 13 years old to walk daily in water on their calves for 3-5 minutes thereafter, running around the room or in the fresh air to restore body warmth again, in 5 days. A similar misfortune was repeated with only 2 out of 6. In a few days these were also cured. Another use of water consisted of keeping the hands in the water for 2 minutes after walking in it. It is too helped and gave a healthy complexion to children who until then had a completely unhealthy appearance. For adults, this remedy is also completely sufficient, only if due to the weakness of the body spoiled along with blood and juices. I advise you to drink 1/2 cup of infusion every day in the morning and in the evening. Yarrow. The colder the water, the better. With warm water, I achieved just the opposite results. Nervous agitation. 2 students say, we suffer from headaches, congestion of blood to the head, insomnia, severe fatigue, lack of appetite, and we are not able to exercise properly. Can't we? To be cured during the holidays with water. I advised them the following: since it was in the spring and the soil was still quite damp, spend time mostly outdoors, barefoot, and when it gets cold, make quick movement. At times walk for 2 to 3 minutes on a ditch filled with water. Hold hands 2 to 3 times a day, up to the elbows in the water. The students liked this treatment very much. They cheered up, became vigorous and healthy, with renewed vigor. Began to study and decided to do the same on the next vacation in order to further strengthen and temper the body. After walking barefoot on wet grass and water, put on shoes and walk quickly until resuming normal body heat. Nervous exhaustion. One priest said that he often has an unbearable headache, and when it subsides, then there is such a sore throat that he can hardly speak. In addition, the back often appears a feeling of painful constriction. General fatigue is also felt. The doctor's testimony stated that he suffers from a pronounced nervous exhaustion and that one must beware of diseases of the head and spinal brain. The patient was extremely irritable and experienced a constant feeling of fear. My treatment: daily morning and afternoon light top drenching, daily 4 minutes walk barefoot on the wet grass. So, for 5 days. Then, for 5 days, daily stronger. Dousing the upper body and knees and walk on water 2 times. In between, sitz baths. Further uses of water were every day 1 back douche, 1 top douche, 1 half bath and walking on water. The patient soon recovered completely. Nervous suffering. One priest relates, owing to great unrest, anxiety and fear, at the end of July 1884. Year fell ill. The disease was expressed at first by an increased, fearful heartbeat and constant difficulty breathing with general weakness. The palpitations stopped after a few months, but other sufferings appeared: severe asthma attacks, pressure, pains and cramps in the abdomen and chest. The pressure was mainly felt in the region of the ribs, and sometimes in the spinal cord. I often felt general fatigue and lethargy of the limbs and pain in the joints. At the same time, constipation and bloating. The voice was like that. I was weakened, that even ordinary speech was hurting me, and there were fits of suffocation. To enjoy voice for a long time became positively impossible. All this time I felt strong dizziness, heaviness and pain in the head, so that he became almost completely incapable of mental work and stress. Every little thing annoys me greatly and aggravates pains in my head and chest to an extreme degree. The doctors decided that I was suffering from nerves. 2 of them, an allopath and a homeopath, prescribed me some remedies: shower, diet, Raleigh bromat, zinc oxidate, nater, prospiage, etc. But this not only did not help, and sometimes even aggravated the disease. The 3rd doctor advised me to have full baths and outdoor exercise. It helped more, and after 6 months I turned exclusively to the help of water. These are the words of the patient. Now let's see how he looks. The face is very red, the edges of the eyelids are somewhat yellow, the ears and lips are bluish red, a 30-year-old man's hair is falling out. What does all this indicate? Certainly, too much rush of blood to the head and chest, and an excessive amount of blood in the head can lead to stretching of blood vessels. It is necessary, therefore, first of all, to divert the blood from the upper parts of the body to the lower limbs and then treat all the consequences of hot fascias. Water applications should follow in this order: foot steam bath, steam head bath, short wrap, Spanish cloak, walking barefoot, top and bottom douches, Spanish again. Raincoat, walking barefoot. In winter it is very good on fresh snow. After 3 weeks the patient became much better, but since the disease is strongly rooted and developed, then a complete cure could come only after a few months. The patient can decide for himself which application of water works best for him and should be used more often, but never be limited to this application, but combine it with applications affecting the whole body. One Bohemian priest says, about a year ago, from overwork, I began to palpitations, insomnia, and then belching, bloating and shortness of breath. Sometimes I felt pain and shivers in arms and legs, anxious state of mind, and at the same time general weakness and fatigue recently disappeared. Appetite and constipation appeared. The complexion was pale yellow, the general appearance was listless, tired. After 7 weeks of treatment, he left fresh, healthy, and sleep also returned to him. The first 3 weeks were applied at night when getting out of bed, half bath. Before lunch, top dousing and walking on water. After lunch, half bath and douche of the back. Walking barefoot on the grass. Subsequent water applications consisted of top douches and douches of knees, half baths, and 2-leg douches. Steam baths. Inside, the patient took daily 8 to 10 juniper berries and infusion of wormwood and sage. Nervous suffering of the bladder. One teacher says, doctors call my illness a nervous, irritable bladder condition. And belly. For about 15 years now I have been suffering from difficulty urinating, sometimes more, sometimes less. This spring, the disease intensified especially. I happen to urinate 15 to 20 times a night with a weak stress. The sediment contained numerous crystals of salts and mucus. In doing so, I suffered strong constipation, flatulence, jerking of the body and nervous scratching of the legs. Full loss of appetite and insomnia drained me. Water applications were complete washing every night. One day, a short wrap, the next, a wet shirt soaked in warm water with salt. A daily cup of horsetail infusion with 2 to 6 crushed juniper berries, and this is in continuation. 3 weeks. After a short time, appetite and sleep returned, and all signs of the disease gradually disappeared, remained. Still fatigue and pain in the legs. Against this I appointed top douche in the morning, pouring over knees in the afternoon, half bath from time to time. The last traces of the disease also soon disappeared. Profuse sweating. Often there are people who sweat easily and profusely even with the slightest exertion. Therefore, they, not to mention constant fatigue, are easily susceptible to all kinds of catarrhs, colds, inflammation, etc. One official complained that he was unwell and suffered from shortness of breath. The doctors found that he had liver and kidney disease. But worst of all, I can't stand drugs at all, I vomit from every spoon. Best of all, not worse, I interrupted this gentleman, whose illness I had already guessed from his fetid sweat. I advised him to prepare a bath of cold water, and when he returns home, quickly undress. Sit in it to the very abdomen and intensively wash the upper body. All this must not go on more than 1 minute, then, without drying off, quickly get dressed and walk about 1/4 hour around the room. The patient cried out, "Yes, you want to kill me. After all, a blow will happen to me instantly. Me always warned against the slightest cold, and you want me to sweat and sit in a cold bath." I calmly tried to explain to this gentleman all the safety of this use of water. By the way, I asked him, when you come home in such sweat that streams pour from your face and your fingers stick, are you afraid to immediately wash your hands and face? Of course not, was the answer. Well, good, and this is for you. Never hurt, why, then, do you not want to give this innocent pleasure also to the whole body? After a moment's hesitation, he promised to give it a try. After 2 weeks I met him again. "Ah, dear father, I am so happy, I feel great." Of course, it did him good, all soreness disappeared, he will soon be 80 years old. Unfortunately, people often respond to my friendly advice not with obedience, but with contempt and ridicule. They themselves then pay for it. The building can be preserved for a long time if it is corrected every year. Destruction, but if it is left unrepaired, then the whole building will surely collapse soon. By the way, I will tell you about one more thing. There is hardly anything in life that is feared as much as not to sweat. Do not get into cold water or go out into the fresh air, or not be exposed to a through wind. All sorts of colds come from this, they say. I readily admit it, but the fact is that it is not themselves that are important. Yourself using water, and how to produce them. On the basis of many years of experience, I state the following. Who is drenched in rain or sweat, in no case should he enter a cold bath, or Be exposed to through wind. B. During frost, never start treatment with water. C. Whoever is soaked in rain should change into dry clothes as soon as possible. He who is wet with sweat, whatever the origin, he should take a short bath. Order a full wash, but then quickly put on dry clothes and do with 1/4 hour of movement until the body will not dry out. Dyspnea. One priest told me the following: I am a strong physique, I was always healthy and strong, but here a year has already passed since my chest is so stuffy that I can hardly breathe, and when I have a cough with shortness of breath, I feel like I'm suffocating. Before I had an excellent sonorous voice, but now you can hardly hear what I say. I am so tired that I can barely walk. Doctors recognized it as part of catarrh. Windpipe, partly behind thoracic catarrh. The uses of water were as follows: not everyone who suffers from shortness of breath should use this. Hydrotherapy, it can be too strong. In general, I do not advise doing too much at the same time. Many uses. Daily 3 to 4 top douches, and for 4 days, 2 times a day walking in water up to the knees. Then in continuation of 5 days daily 2 top douches, back douches and 1 half bath while each day walking on water, in addition, a shawl 3 times a week. After these 5 days, half a bath every day. Dousing the back, upper body, and knees. The treatment ends in a short time. The patient has separated a huge amount of sputum. His general appearance was getting better, his breathing freer, his voice clearer. The mood is more cheerful. The causes of the disease were too warm clothing and lack of movement. Burns. One peasant, saving things during a fire, fell into the fire and burned his face and hands so much that he was to find out. The doctor covered the affected areas with patches. From the fingers and from all over the arm, skin and meat hung in shreds. In despair, the unfortunate man called for death in order to get rid of the terrible torment. The doctor admitted that a cure was impossible. By chance, the local priest was not at home just then. The duties of a priest in his parish. I continued for 3 days and therefore ended up with an unfortunate patient. I could not stand his screams, and that's it. Thought how to ease his suffering and give him the opportunity to die in peace. I ordered to take off the plaster. Quickly mixed with a feather egg white and linseed oil with sour cream, and, to prevent the access of the external air as thickly as possible, smeared this ointment on the wounds. On top I put old and therefore soft linen, wet rags, and tied it all with a dry handkerchief. Every 2 hours a dry handkerchief was removed. Wet rags were again carefully, but abundantly moistened with a sponge, so as to prevent them from drying out and very painful adhesion. In the morning and in the evening they had to be removed, and as soon as possible again to lubricate the wounds with the same ointment. After the first application, the results were good, and gave me hope for healing, but I didn't tell anyone. After 1/4 hour, severe pains decreased and the occurrence of severe seizures was prevented. Inside, I ordered to take 2 tablespoons of wood oil daily. Provençal oil would have the same service. Very soon, under a cover that prevented the access of outside air, new skin formed. The strictest neatness also contributed. After the first days of illness, they were diligently washed off twice in day with warm water, all the pus. In 2 weeks the peasant was almost healthy. The doctor himself confessed that he considers this cure to be a miracle. He had never thought that such severe burns were curable. One servant burned half of his upper body so badly that an arm, half of his chest, and one side of his. The fish were covered with black and yellowish red spots, and the skin had come off everywhere. He looked horrible. The poor fellow was in terrible pain. The same treatment as in the previous case got him back on his feet within 4 weeks. Impossibility of access to outside air, constant humidity of the applied scarf, constant lubrication with a refreshing mass, impeccable cleanliness. This is the main thing that is needed for the faithful and fast. Healing from burns. For minor burns, sauerkraut and cabbage brine work best. Cabbage is taken directly from cake, put on the wound and bandage it with something. The applied dressing should be moistened 3 to 4 times a day in brine and reapply it. If pure brine burns too much, then it can be dilute with ordinary water. Many people prefer mashed potatoes in such cases. Others lubricate the wound with linseed or some other oil and cover it with cotton to prevent access. Outside air. All these remedies are good. One woman burnt her arm to the elbow with boiling water and fire. She was immediately provided with medical assistance. But, in spite of the most careful treatment, the wound did not close for many weeks. Then this. The woman turned to my treatment, thanks to which the pain ceased within a day and the wound became heal up. The treatment was as follows. The entire wound was covered with as thick a layer of egg white as possible and oil and tied with a wet rag. On the first day this was repeated 2 times. All the pus and tainted juices were removed by decoction of hay dust. During treatment, several abscesses formed, against which used a decoction of camel hay. Using these remedies alternately, she very soon cured her hand, which she already considered incurable. Smallpox. Smallpox is scarlet fever in its entirety. Scarlet fever is contagious. Smallpox is even more, be it white or black. Treatment is the same in all cases. They say that if there is no rash during smallpox, then the patient must die. Therefore, nothing could be more reasonable than to call out smallpox matter and remove it as much as possible, rather out of the body. 6 people with smallpox were cured by washing them every time their fever was increased and the suffocation became unbearable. At first, washing was carried out every hour, then every 2 to 3 hours, then only 2 to 3 times a day. On the 7th day, all 6 recovered. They eat almost did not, except they drank quite a lot, which does not harm if they drink in small portions. If everyone, the patients, paid attention to this. If you drink in large quantities at once, then thirst is not quenched and suffocation increases. From such treatment with water, smallpox always appears on the surface of the skin. It appears as small, acute tubercles. Such patients should be washed without fear. The sooner and more accurately you do this, the faster the bubbles ripen, and the poisonous matter is released. It is, so to speak, washed off before will turn into a rash. Patients should use fresh air. Previously they were denied this out of fear. Colds, you should at least open the window. It should be washed so quickly that the whole process lasts no more than 1 minute, so smallpox in adults are as easy to cure as scarlet fever in children. It should be noted, however, that the best thing is apply water sparingly. 4 persons fell ill with the same smallpox. They all recovered too, using 2 to 3 daily. Fold a wet shirt, which could perfectly be replaced by a Spanish cloak. An hour later, the shirt was taken off and put on again only when the heat and suffocation intensified. In the last days it happened at most once or twice. After a week, all treatment was over, and from disfiguring, no trace of smallpox marks remained. When the child begins to complain of a headache, heaviness in the chest, shortness of breath, water treatment time. If these symptoms were to deceive you, water treatment cannot hurt. Hypoxoculation and its consequences. One peasant says, "My child's whole body is swollen, his legs are thick, his stomach is twice as large. Ordinary, the head and the whole upper part of the body are swollen. The child has been sick for 3/4 of the year, and the disease with each worsening for a week. Small abscesses appear on his body here and there, which now open up and heal. I visited 3 doctors in Munich. I also consulted many other doctors, which I had hoped to find help, but in vain. I advised the following: boil hay dust for half an hour, soak a linen shirt in this broth. Squeeze it, put it on the child, wrap it in a woolen blanket, leave it there for 1.5 hours. Do it 2 times a day. Every other day, prepare a bath of hay dust for your child, while putting it in the bath if possible. More hay dust. The water in it should be so warm that the child can easily enter the bath and sit in it for 25 to 30 minutes. After 2 weeks, the child was almost healthy, cheerful, his appetite returned to him. Further applications. The waters were as follows: every other day, the child was given the above wrapping for 1 hour every 3 of the day, a warm bath, but followed by a cold wash. One man says, "I have always been healthy. 10 years ago, when in our area there was a ferocity shaft smallpox, I inoculated it myself, like many others. The place where the smallpox was inoculated always remained somewhat red. In addition, a small rash appeared around this place. For 8 years, I noticed that the inflamed area expands, and now, after 10 years, I have wet lichens, which torment me so much that I cannot sleep at night. These lichens are intensified on one or the other hand. The same is true on the legs. I tried a lot, rubbed various ointments into the skin. I also took a lot inside, but all to no avail. It is clear that blood and juices are spoiled here, and lichens serve as a place for spoiled juices to exit. Applications. Water was as follows: 1, 3 times weekly at night to wash the whole body and, without wiping off, lie down again in bed. 2 to 3 times a day wash the places affected by shingles with a decoction of camel hay. Instead of this decoction, you can use sabur powder by dissolving it in hot water for 1 bottle of tea water. A spoonful of sabur. 3. Apply a Spanish raincoat 2 times a week. All this should be done within 2 to 3 weeks. Further treatment every week or 2, a warm bath alternately with a cold one. Also good. Twice a day, take 3 to 4 tablespoons of wormwood infusion. Swelling of the knee. 1 30-year-old girl has a swollen leg from the ankle to the knee and above. Swelling at times hurt her a lot and was hard and hot. The patient used various means. Doctors recommended to her, including a plastic cast, first for 12 weeks, and then another once within 8 weeks. Her condition deteriorated so much that she could not touch with her foot land. Her knee joint was especially painful. When they had already tried everything, they put a poultice on her leg. From hay dust from the ankles to half of the thigh. The pain subsided at once, the swelling decreased. When the swelling decreased by half, she began to pour over the sore leg every other day. In 8 weeks she was already free to walk, and after a while she could take up work again. Bone swelling often around The bone forms a hard swelling, especially on the chin, ankles, knee, and also in other places. You might think that the bone has grown. The onset of fever and the duration of treatment, often 2 to 3 weeks, show that this is not as unimportant as it seems at first. If such a tumor is let it go, it can easily form caries, and then it is difficult, and sometimes even impossible, to help. The best and quickest remedy for cure is 2 to 3 fold change of compresses on swollen places. It is best to make compresses with a decoction of hay dust, oat straw, camel hay, and compresses with cottage cheese. With swelling on the ankles, it is useful to do a lower and short wrap with swelling on the chin, a shawl or neck wrap, with a knee swelling, wrapping the entire leg. One of these uses per day is sufficient. Hoarseness. One girl, 11 years old, lost her voice a few months ago and could only hardly speak, wheezing. With a bright voice. Her face was completely pale, her eyes were bluish. In addition, it was noticeable significant emaciation and weakness. The natural warmth seemed to have completely disappeared, the appetite was gone. Within 2 months, the girl recovered completely thanks to the following applications of water: 1. Daily. 2 to 3 times walking barefoot on the grass. 2. Shawl, weekly 2 to 4 times. 3. Sitz bath 4 times a week. 4. In warm weather, bathing in warm water in the last 3 weeks, 3 times a week. The food consisted of simple home meals, mainly she drank milk every day, a tablespoon every hour. Now, this girl is completely healthy. One priest always suffered from hoarseness from October to May. He tried a lot, turned to different doctors, but all in vain. He had suffered this for 14 years. Finally he asked for help. To me, and in a very short time healed. I advised him to stand up to his knees in the water every day and at the same time keep both hands in the water. Moreover, he did in the morning or at night, getting out of bed, full of washing. Within 12 days, this chronic disease completely disappeared and during the next 16 years never did not appear again. This can serve as proof that water heals thoroughly. Dance of Saint Wit. One father of the family says, I have a daughter of 10 years old, she is not completely healthy from the very birth. Teething was so hard on her that we thought she was going to die. At the same time she has one leg. Became thinner than the other. Now the girl has a dance of Saint Wit. She cannot eat, she cannot sleep. She just. It is scary to watch when the convulsions begin. I have already turned to many doctors, but her health is getting worse. Boil the aftermath in water for half an hour, I told him, take more of it and add more. Some salt, then soak a coarse shirt in this broth, squeeze it well and put it on the child. Then wrap him in a woolen blanket, and let him lie there for half an hour, and if at this time he falls asleep, then let him sleep until he wakes up. Do this for 8 days 2 times daily and then come with news. 8 days later he came to me and said, the girl has a severe rash on her body, especially on her chest and on the back, but she feels great, does not complain of pain, no seizures, and she sleeps well. She has appetite appeared. What do I need to do next? I told him to wear the child's shirt every 3 days, and so on for 2 weeks. In addition, the girl had to take 20 drops of wormwood tincture daily. Vertebral injury. Pillar. One high-ranking officer, while driving, pressed one of the vertebrae into himself and, as the doctors said, severely damaged the spinal cord. This caused him severe pain, which only occasionally subsided. The spinal injury also caused him severe mental suffering. He turned to the most famous doctors, and they announced to him that his illness was incurable and he should soon receive time of consumption. Then he decided to turn to the help of water. In 6 weeks he was completely cured and before is still healthy, although more than 25 years have passed since that time. What uses of water were assigned to him, I cannot now say for sure, but if such a misfortune happens to you, dear reader, I would advise you the following: wrap yourself 3 times a week in Spanish cloak, take 3 half baths a week with top washings and 2 times a week top and bottom pouring. Do this carefully for several weeks. The whole body, little by little, will get stronger, and all traces of damage will disappear. The damaged vertebra will grow together, as is the case with broken bones, will stop causing suffering. Gout. Anyone who is in the field in the fall can see how the peasants respect it, scattering it everywhere. Manure. In the spring, this creates rotten swamps. In well-fertilized places there will be a wonderful vegetation, and next to it there will be a bare place. This picture, in my opinion, is quite suitable for a description of gout joint aches. Food for man is the same as manure for fields and meadows. But is there in this respect in all estates uniformity? One has everything in abundance every day, even hourly, the other year after year eats the most meager food. If someone delivers too much food every day, every hour, your body, so much that the body is not able to cope with it, the organs cannot process and assimilate it, what will be the consequences of this? Bones, for example, need sulfur and lime. But too nutritious food introduces these substances so much that they would be enough for 2 to 3 such organisms. What should be with it? In this case, a bog, thickened blood, forms in one place, and a swamp in another. Bad juices, a lot of sand, lime, stones collects around the bones. The joints become swollen, inflamed, and the patient experiences the most terrible prolonged torment, while these ossified, gouty nodes due to pain, as it were, gradually burn out and are destroyed. And although the suffering is intense, gout rarely meets with sympathy. This is not entirely true. Christian, but sometimes quite understandable. People say, he enjoyed life too much, the consequences. This is a disease. Meanwhile, gout affects the poor, and even the poorest people. Once a poor, extremely hard-working servant came to me. He had gout in the strongest degree. The reason for his illness was that he completely neglected caring for with your body. A leaky inflated fur expels air not into the pipes of the organ, but through the holes. Weakened, semi-painful organs often work for tumor instead of muscle, for growth on bone instead of bone. Others. The reasons may be too much stress, a cold, etc. Gout is severely tormenting. Many people, to a lesser extent, countless people. Some have it on their fingers. Others on the head, many on the outside, some on the inside of the body. Ordinary people, who are not yet very weakened and precisely follow all the instructions, I treat very willingly and easy. I am never wrong about the higher grade gout. They are a burden to me and their. Most of them cannot be treated with water, because they do not fulfill the prescriptions, as they are under double yoke of effeminacy and fear of water, although they could be treated as well as other patients. One noble priest had been suffering from severe pain in his legs for 4 weeks. Friends jokingly called him future member of the Gout Society. But sweating cured him. A year later, the pains returned and forced him to lie in bed for 12 weeks. He was sweating a lot again, but this time it didn't help. He asked me advice, promised to fulfill everything exactly, if only this terrible disease would no longer returned to him. The main treatment was completed in a few weeks. How quicklime swells under the influence of water and crumbles, as the gouty nodes crumbled under the influence of various uses of water. After that, the patient periodically repeated one or another application of water, and, as far as I know, the disease did not return to him in subsequent years. The reader will find a description of the applications in the following example. One priest told me that his feet burn like fire, that he is simply in despair and does not know that he make. I advised to put boiled and well squeezed hay dust on a piece of linen, put this on sore legs and tie such a compress. After 2 hours, he should again wet this compress in decoction of hay dust and apply it as before. The second time, the compress may be lukewarm or cold, is all the same. The sick priest did this in the following days. Already on the first day in the evening, the pains decreased significantly, and after 2 or 3 days the patient no longer felt them at all. If the patient does not have hay dust, then you can use a decoction for the foot compress instead. Oat straw. It also works great for gout. Note that for this disease I use mainly warming, more precisely, dissolving agents. But I must warn against a mistake here. As soon as the patient stops feeling pain in the legs, he thinks, of course, that he has now completely recovered. It would be a big mistake to stop after this to be treated. Foot compresses need to be replaced with some applications of water for the whole body in order to, if possible, remove all harmful substances from the body. It is best to apply a Spanish raincoat 2 to 3 times weekly for the first 3 weeks, 1.5 to 2 hours, and the next month, take warm baths with a decoction of hay dust or oat straw with triple change. One day laborer fell ill with severe gout. He put on a sack soaked in hot water 3 times a week. Oat straw broth. In addition, he took 2 baths with pine branches weekly at 42 to 44 degrees with triple change. Every other day, he washed himself at night, getting out of bed, with cold water. 3 weeks later he was healthy, but still used the bag for some time, 2 times a week, and warm bath described above, and soon with renewed vigor he could get to work again. One mole rat showed me gouty nodes on his fingers and toes, which, he said, at times burned terribly. This is gout from dampness. In a short time, he recovered from this disease, taking the above described warm bath every other day, and also putting on a bag every 3rd or 4th day. He put a compress of boiled hay on his hands at night. Dust. One poor man fell ill with severe aches in his limbs. Is it due to gout or some other illness? He did not know. He experienced the most terrible torments that made him incapable of work. It was just haymaking time. I advised him to make in the haystack, which was drying at this time, something like a hole, bury yourself in it and cover yourself with hot hay so that only the head is visible. He did. And at a quarter of an hour he sweated so much that his body was all as if in water. During 10 days 6 times he repeated this and was completely recovered. However, I will not advise this to anyone. Only those who have experienced a similar procedure on themselves know the whole the power of such a hay steam bath. Even old, already rooted diseases can be cured by this harmless bathroom. Based on my experience, I must say that only he can usefully take such a steam bath, who immediately after it takes a cold half bath with washing the upper part body. The latter is very strengthening. This is not as stupid and reckless as it might seem to others. 2 noble gentlemen were secured by these steam hay baths, 15 in number, that day. It seemed that with such a simple means, such a simple way, it was possible, as it were, to recreate the organism. I am sure that weaker rheumatism and convulsions are common consequences or remnants of serious illnesses. Herb can easily be eliminated by 2 to 4 such hay steam baths. One artisan came to me and complained, "Both my legs are very swollen, I am experiencing constant pain, so that at night I cannot sleep even for an hour. Joint pain is especially severe, my hands also hurt, I have an appetite, but when I start eating, my stomach swells up so much that I can hardly breathe, I can't walk, and when I get up, my head starts spinning so much that I just don't know where I am. I was treated by many doctors, I took many medicines, but it seems to me that my situation has only worsened. I have wanted to die more than once." This patient looked very healthy and strong. He was about 50 years old. According to doctors, the cause of his illness was obesity of the heart. At 5 weeks, this patient was freed from all his suffering. What did he do? 1. He applied daily, then after 1, and then after 2 days a compress of hay dust was applied to the naked body, and a warm scarf was tied over it for 2 to 3 hours. 2. First every other day, and then after 2, he put on a shirt dipped in a decoction of hay dust. When the swelling on the legs disappeared, the patient took a half bath every day and doused the rut. Diarrhea. A 48-year-old man comes to me and says, "I have diarrhea all the time. Today already 7 times. It's because I'm on the road, but generally up to 6 times a day. I have been ill with this for 1 year already. The patient's complexion is fresh. The patient did 1 every morning and after dinner, top drenching, 2 every morning he walked on the water, and after lunch, doused to the knees. The result was that the chair did not appear until the 5th day. Inside I didn't take anything except 6 to 8 juniper berries." The reader will ask, perhaps, why the treatment was prescribed quite unusual. The answer is simple: this man was seemingly strong and fresh, therefore, natural forces were present, if you support them with more use. Water and strengthen them by increasing heat, then the body itself had to defeat and expel the disease. Further, I advised 2 to 3 half baths a week and just as often top douche and douche of knees. A loss. Boat. There is a complete and incomplete loss of voice. 17 years ago, a priest came to me. For a long time he always carried a pencil and paper with him to write on it what he wants to say to others. He certainly could not serve. Everywhere asked for help, he was given rinsing, he was electrified, magnetized, jars were placed, 14 times burned. Lap his throat and, in the end, announced that the ability of speech could not return to him, so many ulcers, dimples, etc. made lapis. Having tried all these means, the priest began to heal himself with cold water, to which he, after God, and ascribes the relief he received. He looked perfectly healthy, he didn't have any particular pain, and he thought that, except for his voice, everything is in order. Can the organ of speech become unusable if is he not damaged by anything and the patient does not experience pain anywhere? If I tightly tie a handkerchief around my mouth, then speak. It will be impossible, although the organ itself remains intact. It would be foolish to look for the causes of the disease in throat. To return the ability to speak, you need to untie the scarf. Already the first top douche gave me the opportunity to notice strong congestion, almost tumor-like. Education. These were the villains who held the larynx and vocal cords in a grip and prevented them from activities. Remove them and the organ is free. Removal of the tumor occurred as a result of dissolving and water effluent applications. In the first place in this row is the steam bath for the head. It causes sweat on the very upper part of the body. Immediately after her, a cold douche removes dissolved and strengthens the body. If the patient is full, then you need to divert the blood downwards by means of foot steam bath followed by cold dousing. These two uses of water should be performed once a week, and if the patient is obese, then twice. The next application of water dissolving effect, Spanish cloak, at the same time, cold baths 2 times a week, 1-minute half baths up to the abdominal area with enhanced washing can be used instead of a bath. Top and bottom pouring. These procedures, precisely performed, combined with the correct lifestyle. Do not sit for a long time, walk, be in the fresh air, do not do heavy work, cured the patient completely. Since then, 17 years have passed, and his voice is still cool and fresh. Countess K, 18 years old, says, 2 years ago I was seriously ill with diphtheria. After him, I had terrible headaches, and a few weeks after a warm bath I completely lost her voice, so I had to write whenever I needed to say anything. Months. I did inhalation, took various medications, I was electrified for whole weeks. Leeches pressed to my throat drove me to faint. I remember with horror how they tortured me. This went on for about 2 years. Finally, the doctors announced that I must die of consumption. Everyone decided that the voice will never return to me. Who can know how I am suffering? I'm constantly cold, like I did not dress warmly, no matter how hot it was in the room. My appetite has completely disappeared, and I shouldn't. There is nothing. I am just desperate. The unhappy girl, of course, was very afraid of cold water. But I tried to convince her that her throat absolutely great, the body is extremely emaciated and weakened. Once it strengthens and revives, speech will return by itself. The girl is extremely anemic, as is evident from her sensitivity to cold, only on her chest still feels warm. She needed to do body wraps to restore normal circulation. Blood. The patient had to eat simple food and daily 2 to 3 times keep her hands up to the elbows in water and walk on water up to the ankles, or even better, on wet stones. Strange as it may seem, these applications serve as an excellent means of returning heat to the anemic, half-dead limbs. In addition, she was given 1 to 2 times a day intense cold washing of her back, chest and abdomen. For the first procedures, she had to overpower herself, but the improvement in her condition gave her vivacity. She seemed to be resurrected. Then the patient plunged her legs deeper into the water and held her hands in it for longer. Instead of 1/2 minute, a whole minute. These applications of water lasted 8 to 10 days. Then, every 2 to 3 days, douches were made, knees and top, one before lunch, the other after, then daily half bath to the abdomen, 1 minute, and top drenching, one procedure before lunch, another after lunch. Food was given light, digestible, without pungent roots, promoting hematopoiesis, from drinks. Best milk, a little beer, nothing intoxicating. Our patient regained strength and voice. 4. Greater health improvement. The above prescribed procedures should have been continued for a long time, stopping them gradually. One 16-year-old girl lost her voice for no apparent reason, so she could only be understood from great difficulty. No medication helped. The patient had a wonderful appetite, a blooming appearance, only. The neck is slightly short and somewhat plump. It was a little difficult for her to breathe. The legs were constantly cold. After 6 weeks, the girl recovered completely. A healthy face, hot head, and cold feet indicated congestion in the upper parts of the body. Maybe even on stagnation of blood, so it was necessary to divert it down. The girl took every day 2 to 3 cold foot baths, no more than 1 minute, followed by movement in the fresh air. Then she diligently walked barefoot on wet grass and stones. When the blood was diverted, it was necessary to remove with water everything stagnant and accumulated in the upper parts of the body. The best remedy for this is a Spanish cloak. First every day, then 2 to 3 times a week, then 1 time a week. After 2 weeks, half baths were made for strengthening, 1 minute, no more, once a week with upper douches, or top and bottom douches instead. So, the treatment consisted of 3 parts. 1. Dissolving and removing harmful juices. 2. The formation of heat in the body. 3. Strengthening it. The body got stronger, and the girl not only recovered, but even later became a good singer. Sweating feet. Sweat on my feet is a real misfortune that haunts me all the time, so many people complain. What is it? They ask. First cold in the legs, then burning, colic, and always this terrible smell. This is indeed a great misfortune, but even greater misfortune is caused by eliminated foot sweat. I know a gentleman who was advised against foot sweat to keep his feet cold twice a day. Water, the sweat really stopped. But what happened then? A serious illness has replaced the sweating of the feet. Yes, this is as it should be. If I want to drive the fox out of the lair, I must not block its exit. Foot sweat is the secretion of spoiled juices that infect and suppress blood vessels, hence this nasty smell. It is best to wrap the legs with a cloth immersed in a decoction of hay or pine branches. These compresses, or wraps, extract painful juices, strengthen and heal. In the course of 10 days, make 5 to 6 such wraps, then 2 weeks daily for 40 minutes. Warm foot bath to the calves with a triple change and cold dousing, 1 minute. For sex, pure notes, 1 foot wrap or 1 foot bath weekly. It is very useful against foot sweat to walk barefoot on wet grass or, at least, before going to bed, on room. Fresh air, acting on the feet, free from socks and boots, has an excellent strengthening effect. Painful sweating. Sometimes the whole body suffers, like the legs, with painful sweating. One gentleman from the upper classes of society sweated so much at night that by morning the mattress, sheet and pillow become completely wet. Moreover, despite the greatest precautions and wrapping, in winter I was constantly ill with catarrh. The smell from his clothes was felt even at a considerable distance. Of course, it is impossible to quickly cure such sweating, since you need to gradually strengthen the body, weakened by persistent sweating, and remove diseased juices from the body. But with a certain patience you can, to achieve a complete cure, as it was with our patient. How should it be treated? 3 times a week, a Spanish cloak. If there is no time during the day, you can wear it at night instead of a night shirt. Hours for 1.5 to 2 to 3 times a week, complete washing, and if the patient suffers from insomnia, then it is useful to produce them 2 times at night, getting out of bed. During sweating, washing should be done strongly, but quickly, and then, without wiping off, take cover well and lie down. The bed should not be too cold. Room. Always start treatment with a Spanish raincoat. It is good, even after recovery, to apply the Spanish cloak once a week, as well as full douches. Not. You have to be afraid of a somewhat unpleasant beginning. How the little dog squeals and flounders when it is for the first time thrown into the water. And then she learns to swim perfectly and eagerly rushes into the water. Paralysis attacks. Paul was hit. The right side of the body is half paralyzed, mouth rolled to the side, right. Eyelids are paralyzed, speech is difficult. The visiting physician stated that before the repetition of the blow, nothing you cannot know and undertake, while the patient can take a little mineral water. The patient was not satisfied with such advice, turned to the help of water and recovered after 12 days. Ever since, 13 years have passed and he is still healthy. In what way was he cured? The steam bath for the head has a dissolving effect in the upper body, foot, at the bottom. Then warm baths, alternating with cold ones or with washing, they also act as a softening way and distract hot flushes from the head. When hot flashes are eliminated and circulation is regulated, you need to strengthen the body with nutritious light food, but without spices and irritants. Need to also avoid mental stress. One priest was struck. One half of the body was completely paralyzed, consciousness and the ability to speak is gone. Medical help was powerless, and the doctor announced that the stricken side will remain paralyzed forever, and the next blow will cause paralysis of the other half of the body, and the outcome is death. Then, I thought, we are not risking anything by trying hydrotherapy. Cold hand and leg. Washed heavily with cold water. On the second day, 2 warm baths were made with strong washing legs and 4 washings of the upper body. On the third day, in the paralyzed limbs, one could already notice signs of sensitivity and life. On the fourth day, a bottom wrap was done to the helpless body and a half-dead leg is immersed 2 times in a warm bath with salt. This was done for 14 days. After, the patient could even raise his paralyzed arm. Then complete washing was done daily and steam baths for the head and feet alternated once a week. This was done for another 3 weeks. Forces are all arrived, there was an appetite. In the next 3 weeks we used warm and cold baths, one at a time. Week 1 steam bath for the head, 1 foot steam per week and 3 half baths with cold wash. Upper and lower body, 1 minute. For final recovery, top and bottom douches. And a Spanish cloak. Health completely returned, only speech remained difficult and not quite clear because the tongue was damaged too much. If a blow or paralysis of any part of the body happens to someone, then in any of these cases it is necessary immediately do a good cold washing of the back, chest and abdomen and repeat it 2 to 3 times in day. A little salt or vinegar can be added to the water. Likewise, you need to wash your hands and feet too. Blood and warmth were distributed evenly throughout the body. Possible washings are extremely important, and in the event of a blow, they must be started without a moment's delay. If the blow is not strong and the patient is able to sit, then it is best to first give him a 20-minute steam bath for the head, followed by intensive washing of the upper parts. After 6 hours, leg pairs in. Within 20 minutes, again followed by a full or bottom wash. In the beginning, you need to beware of full wraps, because body heat is too low and not can be refunded. I know of one case when a paralyzed patient was immediately started to be wrapped. After the second wrapping, the patient went cold and blue. Only by strong warming was he saved from death. Decomposition of blood. Once, during Lent, after Mass, I visited a priest. It turned out that loved ones were expecting him. Imminent death. The priest, sitting in an armchair, told me the following about his illness: all over my body. Wounds. On my face you see 5 pieces of plaster. There are more than 20 of them on the whole body, everywhere I see. Small abscesses filled with brown pus. The attached patch falls off the next day, and by pieces of rotten meat stick to it. Nothing helps me in my torment, especially intolerable nausea and aversion to food. Dear friend, give me good advice. I advise the unfortunate man to drink 4 to 6 tablespoons of sage and wormwood infusion every 2 hours every day, so that the nausea would disappear, and left, not hoping to see him alive anymore. A few days later, however, a messenger appears with the news that the nausea has passed and the patient has developed appetite. What to do next? I ordered to do full washing every day for 2 weeks. Cold water, but as quickly and shortly as possible. I was again notified that the patient was much better. Then, I advised to do for several weeks, one day a Spanish cloak, and the next a full washing. After 2 weeks, my brother recovered and was already sending out the service, and for another 24 years. He performed his pastoral duties. Crayfish. Cancer is one of the most common diseases in our time. It can form and destroy any part of the body. If the disease has developed greatly, then I can no longer help with water, because that the blood and juices are contaminated. Cancer is a contagious disease, especially for those in whose blood and juices there is a predisposition to this disease. I know some of the spouses who visited their relative, who suffered from cancer of the tongue. With fear, they looked at the destruction wrought by a disease unknown to them. 3 days later this disease appeared in him. The wife's tongue was half swollen, the husband's lower lip became inflamed, and a wound formed. We got infected, they announced to me. I tried to cheer up these scared people. I advised them to rinse the whole mouth with alum water one day, especially sore spots during. On the second day, do the same with sabur water. In addition, take a steam bath every other day too. Head alternately with a neck wrap. The couple were completely cured of this disease. I never did not believe that such a disease could be transmitted only through the action of fright. I later learned that in the opinion of the doctors, they did indeed become infected. I have seen cancer in its initial stages in its more developed forms. They were easy, curable. The purpose of all uses of water was to purify blood and juices. Nerve disorder. One gentleman with a certain position in the world, as a result of overwork, developed a strong structure of the body. One could fear that this mental disorder would not end in the most in a sad way. For months he was sleep deprived. The doctor's help did not bring any benefits. And in this case, the water provided such help that the unfortunate, after 13 weeks, vigorous and healthy, was again able to get to work. The applications of water in this case were very simple. First day, washing your upper body before lunch with water and vinegar, then dousing your knees 1 minute after lunch, as before lunch. Second day, top pouring half a watering can, immediately after that walking barefoot on wet stones, and at the same time a full watering can on your knees. After lunch, the same thing. The third day, top douche 1 watering can, and douche of knees. After lunch, top pouring 1 watering can. Then stand in water for 3 minutes. This application of water caused the patient to cry to tears. Such treatment lasted a week. For the next week, the upper knees were doused alternately with standing in water, as far as The patient's sensitive legs allowed for pouring took already 1 to 3 watering cans. It was already necessary in the water. Stand up to your knees, but no more than 2 to 3 minutes. In the 3rd week, all these applications of water were intensified, and a sitz bath was added every other day. Usually after dinner. 4th week, top douches, standing in water and sometimes half bath. The 5th week, in the morning doused back and standing in water or doused knees, after lunch top douche. Everything. These uses of water were alternated, back douches continued until complete recovery. Inside white powder, a pinch daily alternately with 6 to 8 juniper berries and infusion of the mixture. Wormwood with sage. Rheumatic condition. There is no way to list all the rheumatic sufferings. One is tormented by a headache, the other is pain in teeth, this one has aching hands, that one has legs, back, chest, etc. Rheumatism is a real eternal Jew among diseases. One veterinarian complained to me that he was not able to work, as rheumatism, like a cat, clung to his right shoulder blade. If you like, Mr. Veterinarian, I will put my dog on your cat, and you will be freed from it. Within 1 day, I told him. He smiled incredulously, but promised to obey me. He went home, and his wife did him first a strong dry rubbing of the back, and then the top douche. After 8 hours he took a steam bath for the head, followed by a cold douche. The day is not over yet, and the cat was defeated. Dry rubbing of the back has not yet been mentioned, and for this reason. Rheumatism sometimes occurs on the surface of the skin, sometimes it nests very deeply, even in the marrow of the bones, as there is reason to think, while pain occurs from minor inflammation, circulatory disorders, stagnation of blood, etc. If it is difficult to get rid of rheumatism with one hydrotherapy, fix everything. Deeply rooted damage, we come to the rescue with dry rubbing, which quickly warms the body and regulates blood circulation. One peasant felt such severe rheumatic pains in the legs and especially in the thighs that he could not walk. He didn't even know how he made it. This patient made himself 2 wraps daily from a hot decoction of hay dust, for 2 hours each. Times, starting from the armpits, and wrapped up well in bed. 10 such wraps completely healed his. Another peasant, due to terrible pain in his thighs, could not even do the wraps. They planted him 3 times daily in a bath, 41-44 degrees, of hay dust for 25 minutes each time. At 3 days, he is completely recovered. I could give countless examples of rheumatism of the head. The easiest is such rheumatism. It was eliminated by applying water directed not to the head itself, but to the legs with steam and warm baths. If you act on the head with cold water, the pain intensifies. If warm, the inflow increases. Blood. Water works best when taken in the following order. Warm foot bath with salt and ash. Shawl. Foot steam bath. A steam bath for the head with a cold douche. Shawl. These water treatments, taken one at a time, cure the most severe rheumatism of the head. Often from a through wind, colds, rapid temperature changes. You should never start rheumatism, because from it subsequently lung diseases can develop. Eyes, ears, etc., inflammation, blood poisoning, and other serious illnesses. One gentleman with a famous position in society, he came to me and said, I suffer from head to toe with rheumatism, pain and catarrh, which are intensified and weakened. I don't know how to help myself. I am lacking appetite and insomnia, and if this continues, I must retire. I have been wearing for a long time Jaeger's shirts and underpants. Over the Jaeger's shirt, I wear another velvet shirt, made of the densest matter. Then more woolen pants, then a cloth vest with a thick lining, warm trousers and another frock coat, and despite all this, I am constantly cold, and my body is covered with smelly sweat. Now, let's talk about treatment. First, a full douche was done and the dirt from the skin was washed, then douche. Knees with washing. These applications of water were carried out 2 times within 3 days. On the 4th day there was a half bath was made, an hour later, top pouring, after which Yejariva's clothes were removed. On the 5th day, the second pair of pants was replaced by canvas ones. On the 7th day, the pleated shirt was replaced by a linen shirt and a vest with the sleeves have been removed. 2 upper and lower douches were made daily, alternating with half baths. After 2 weeks, the body was free from rheumatism and pain, the skin transpired like a healthy person, sleep and the appetite became excellent, and the patient rejoiced as if resurrected. By the end of the summer, he could begin to interrupt bathroom activities. Childbirth. The young woman gave birth to 3 dead children. She was very saddened by this, especially since, in the opinion doctor, she will never be able to inform the child. I consoled her and gave her hope that if she starts use water, her body will become so strong that then she will have nothing to be afraid of in this relation. She consoled herself and began to follow my instructions. At first she began to use the lightest methods of hardening. Gradually she more and more got used to the strongest hardening applications of water and finally settled on semi and full baths. Within 3 years she gave birth to 3 healthy, strong children. One woman was sick with typhus. Headaches drove her to despair. Her relatives brought her from city to village, so that she can die here in peace. To all this, the poor woman had to soon become a mother. They turned to me for advice. I recommended doing short wraps, which was immediately executed. The headaches got weaker. To be more confident, the relatives asked the doctor before who used the patient, is it useful to do a wrap? He replied that the first wrap would cause premature birth. Meanwhile, while this answer was received, they have already managed to do 6 wraps. The typhoid patient recovered and gave birth to a safely healthy child. Erysipelas on the face. Erysipelas is nothing more than a poisonous matter that collects between the skin and meat and looking for some way out. Erysipelas can appear on the leg, arm, head, anywhere on the body. Wherever it has not appeared, a strong tension is formed, as if the skin is too small and it should burst. Often, the erysipelas does not come out quickly, and then the patient experiences severe pain. At first, the erysipelas appears in the form of small pimples filled with brownish liquid. Their number gradually increases to a huge amount, and they are so poisonous that they eat away whole sections of the skin. Erysipelas can easily become dangerous and even cause death if it does not come out, but produces blood poisoning inside, which spreads rapidly throughout the body. A fatal outcome is usually given by those cases when the erysipelas, leaving its first place outside, dips inside the body. One worker, who had a face on his hand, did not pay attention to it, saying that it was a woman's god. Sickness, the face disappeared inside, but after a while it opened in the brain, and the unfortunate man died. I also know a priest who had a face on his leg. How he treated her, I do not know, but the face disappeared and appeared already on the shoulder. Then she left, and from there to appear in a new place, in brain, and after 4 days the unfortunate man died. When treating, most of all, you need to take care that the erysipelas does not change its place. Immediately in place. Appearance, it should be weakened, and the poisonous juices are brought out. In the same way, you need the ability to reduce blood flow to the affected area. When an erysipelas appears on the leg, a short wrap is best. It distracts blood from the sore spot. Then you can do a leg wrap, capturing the places surrounding the sore spot in it. It is possible in this case, take out direct treatment. To do this, cover the sore spot soaked in warm water with a piece of soft used canvas and tied with a dry handkerchief or cloth. It dissolves and extracts painful juices. If an erysipelas appears on the arm, then you need to use a short wrap to divert blood from the upper body parts. It is then helpful to put on a shawl and wet it each time the heat rises. It is also useful here to begin the direct treatment of erysipelas. If an erysipelas appears on the head, then a compress on the torso will divert blood from the head, and a neck wrap will reduce the amount of poisonous matter. When these applications of water have already been repeated several times, you can take up the direct treatment of erysipelas, at first warm, and then, when the redness and swelling disappear, cold water. In the latter case, water is applied in the form of compresses or head wraps. One priest from M. writes, I must have got a mug on my face as a result of a cold. Heat. With strong, profuse sweat, face was very swollen. Being in this state every day, even during, I washed my chest, back, shoulders, and sometimes my legs, but not my face, with cold water 4 to 5 times in the most intense sweat. This produced a wonderful effect. After 4 days the fever disappeared, and on the 10th day I had already left the room. So, as at night sweat sometimes still appeared, then, getting out of bed, washed my whole body with cold water and putting on clean shirt, went back to bed. I was once sick with erysipelas, and when I was treated not with water, the disease. This one lasted more than a month. Erysipelas of the skin of the face. My husband's face got a mug, the whole face of the races was swollen, red as fire, he has a strong fever. Redness has spread all over the face, small blisters appear everywhere. He moans terribly. So, one woman complained to me. I advised using a shawl soaked in warm water 3 times within 3 hours, every. Take off the scarf for 3/4 of an hour, soak it in fresh water and then apply it again, moisten 3 to 4 hours later. A 4-fold handkerchief in water, squeeze it out well and put it on your stomach for 3 hours, but every. Take off the handkerchief for an hour, moisten it again in fresh water and apply it again. 3 hours after the wrapping is stopped, the patient lies on a sheet folded several times, soaked in cold water and well squeezed out. All this must be done until the fever stops and all harmful substances. Nothing needs to be applied to the face, it should only be applied from time to time when skin tension already too sensitive to washing with warm water. If the thirst is too high, it is best to drink water or water with sugar, but always a little. Another way to treat erysipelas, the patient needs to apply a shawl twice a day, each time for 3 hours. Wetting it every hour in fresh water, the rest of the day, every 3/4 of an hour, you need Wash him with water and vinegar all over his back, chest and stomach, or, best of all, the whole body, but do it. It takes no more than 1 minute. If the fever decreases, then it is enough to wash every 2 to 3 hours, and then only once a day. If first they take warm water with vinegar for washing, then cold water should be taken. The face only needs to be washed with lukewarm water from time to time. So, many have already been cured by treatment, so that not even a trace of the disease remains. Heart disease. We now meet quite a few people suffering from nervous, gastric and heart diseases. The heart, stomach and nerves are the scapegoats that pay a price. If anyone, or 20 to 30 years old, was completely healthy, if he did not feel, so to speak, where his heart, and suddenly begins to be ill, then immediately suggests some kind of heart disease, or even incurable, organic heart powder. Empty words. Years of experience I've seen. A lot of such cases convinced me that all these heart defects do not exist at all. Out of 100 cases where the patients themselves assumed that they had heartache or that they assumed it, there was very little really sick of the heart. As a rule, the heart turned out to be healthy, but there were reasons causing temporary heart pain. The healthiest cat will scream if you step on its tail. The best watch will stop if the weights are removed, but it would be wrong to say that the clock is bad. The flute will stop making sounds if the valves are closed. The healthiest heart can go wrong. To act if some enemy, sitting in the body, squeezes his throat, so to speak. Find this enemy, eliminate a certain morbid condition, and with this all suffering of the heart will disappear. Me. Always annoying when they say, heart disease, heart disease. This is only useless. Frighten people and increase the anxiety with more excitement. One person complained to me that, according to the doctors, he had heart disease, it was expanding too much. I asked if he had ever been ill. He denied this, but, after thinking a little, added that he had one leg in the knee bend rash. That was enough for me. Healthy, strong male body. Opened a way for himself to excrete unhealthy juices. My task now was only to help the body as soon as possible and better get rid of them. In addition, the patient noticed that whenever the rash increases, he feels relief in the region of the heart. If the rash disappeared or decreased, there was always a strong heartbeat. I advised to do 2 times a week. Short wrap, 1 bottom wrap, 1 Spanish cloak and 1 foot steam bath. B. Within 3 weeks the body excreted everything that was unhealthy, and the patient completely recovered. Once at night, at about 10 o'clock, I was called to a woman who was so suffocated that she could no longer speak. Her heart was beating so hard that his beating was clearly visible on the blanket, and his beating could be heard even at some distance. The patient tasted sweet in her mouth. She was afraid she would die of bleeding, like her mother, who died that same year. The doctor found that she had several illnesses, but mainly illness. Hearts. Hands and feet are cold, heart palpitations. What does this mean? Probably all the blood flowed from limbs to the heart, and looking for a way out from there. From this come beats and blows, as if the blood wants burst the valves. You have seen the noise with which the water collected during the rain into one place, seeks to find a way out. She wants to pave her way by force. Within a few minutes, managed to reduce this woman's terrible heartbeat by using a half-folded wet towels that were placed on her belly. 10 minutes later, my heart was beating calmly. Next day, the patient was given 2 complete washings in bed. On the 3rd day, a Spanish raincoat. On the 4th, a steam bath for Heads, on the 5th, a foot steam bath. In this order, she continued to make these applications of water more. For a while. After that, the heart was completely healed. One high-ranking gentleman was ill for many years and could only continue with difficulty. Their responsibilities. The very trifle caused him the strongest heartbeat, excitement, fear. The people around him had to be very careful with him. Any grief and joy caused him the strongest heartbeat. Both in winter and in summer, his rooms were heated a certain temperature. He turned to the most famous doctors. They all decided that the patient was suffering, except hemorrhoids, diseases of the lungs and liver, also heart disease, which should end in heart paralysis. This gentleman actually died soon after. The body was opened, and what was it? Lungs, liver and heart belong to the healthiest organs. But a mass of fat has formed around the heart, a whole layer of fat has also formed in the chest. So this lord died of a lack of blood. The blood supply was completely depleted, because it all turned into muscle and fat. One doctor who was present at the autopsy told me this and added, and in this case, science again. I was very wrong. One girl complained that she always felt pressure in the area of the heart, and palpitations intensify to such an extent that every time she is afraid of dying suddenly, it happens to her when walking fast from fright, and also when she hears a story about misfortune, hands and feet grow cold, and in the heart a strong fever is felt. According to the doctors, she had heart disease. It goes without saying that. Heart disease, and could it be anything else? So clear, so simple, in essence, the whole point is here. If pain runs up to a child sitting on the threshold of the door, shaking the dog, he begins to scream, jump up and in fright runs into the house shouting, "Mom, Mom." The same. It happens to the heart when something frightens it, it raises a cry, knocks, blood runs from the threshold, i.e. from limbs, into the house, into the heart. What's so strange? Where is the suffering of the heart? I advised the girl first of all leave all useless wraps, etc. and then apply easier methods for hardening the body. A gentle creature will no longer be frightened by the barking of a dog, will not shudder when the whistle of a locomotive. Best remedies, standing up to your knees in cold water 3 times for 1 minute every day and holding hands for the same amount of time in cold water. If the water seems too cold to the child, he can warm her with his breath. These applications should be done for 1 week. After that, do weekly 3 times at night, getting out of bed, quick washings with cold water and only once a week. Take a cold bath for no more than 1/2 minute with a strong rinsing of the upper parts. Body. These applications of water should be done during the 2nd week. In the 3rd and 4th weeks, the patient should do the top and bottom pouring daily, and after that immediately warm up with movement or work. After 6 weeks, the patient was completely healthy. One girl comes to me and asks for help. For 6 years I was a music teacher at one institute. Now I am tormented by such severe headaches that I cannot hear the sounds of a single instrument, neither organ, no piano, no violin. Even the ringing of the church bells causes great pain in head. According to the doctors, I have nervous and heart pain. I cannot go back to the monastery. Sick, and I must be left without any means of subsistence. I told her that there was nothing to help her. When she asked why I couldn't do anything for her, I answered her, "You are like an educated city. A young lady who knows languages and music well, you don't want to do what I tell you to. Generally although the condition is very deplorable, it can still be improved. To be healthy, I will agree to everything, she said, quickly making up her mind, and kept her word. I told her to walk for 10 days. Barefoot in the meadow, it was March. She took a warm foot bath and top douche daily. After 6 days, instead of a warm foot bath, I became daily in water up to the belly. As far as she was allowed her strength and skill, she worked in the field. After 10 days, she returned home, where she continued to do all these applications of water with pleasure and hunting, and was still, like me, housework and field work. Instead of playing on the piano, she worked diligently with a spade and a rake. The more the body got stronger, the weaker they became. Nervous and heart suffering. She recovered completely after 4 months. Scarlet fever. Scarlet fever usually appears epidemically, and a lot of people die from it, especially children, and sometimes adults. The first signs of scarlet fever are headaches, tightness in the chest, and strong fluctuations. Temperature, then fever, then chills. This disease is very easy to cure with water. Children are usually out of danger after 2 days of treatment. With adults, the matter is somewhat at a loss. A shirt soaked in hot water with salt and squeezed, then the child is well wrapped so that the outside air does not reach the body. Across an hour this shirt is removed, and the whole body will be covered with a rash. In case of extreme heat, the child is given a quick washing and put to bed again. If the fever intensifies and breathing is difficult, wear a shirt 3 to 4 once a day. During further procedures, the water is used exclusively cold. Need to do. Be careful when using a wet shirt, do not wrap it up too heavily, and, having removed the wet shirt, put it on dry now. Scarlet fever is completely cured in 4 to 6 days. The patient rarely has an appetite, but you should never force him to eat. If you are very thirsty, which is often, it is best to give water with a little sugar or wine. Milk is also good, often, but little by little. Ludwig, a 10-year-old boy, has such a fever that he can hardly speak. Complains that he has everywhere. Hurts. He was washed every hour for 2 days. On the 3rd day, the child already had appetite. The washings continued twice a day. On the 5th day, he felt good. On the 6th, had already got out of bed and could soon go out into the air. Often the fever with scarlet fever is so strong that it does not subside even for a whole week, sometimes 2, and have to be washed every half hour. Let everyone judge for himself whether they can. Small doses of antipyretics help. Water, on the other hand, heals correctly and easily, if only it apply correctly. Stomach cramps. Mr. N often caught cold and had pains in his stomach. Often there was also vomiting due to accumulation of gases. Afterwards he felt good again and had an excellent appetite. But with the flow time, the disease intensified and made itself felt, especially after eating, so that sometimes he even cried out from pain. At the same time, he felt chills throughout his body. Hands and feet were cold as ice. In all these cases, the stomach is least of all the culprit for suffering. Strong pressure of gases on him causes an urge to vomiting and vomiting. The latter relieves the patient's condition only for a short time. The disease will be defeated only when a uniform temperature is restored throughout the body. Uniform transpiration and blood circulation. This can be achieved by the following measures. The patient needs to be washed 3 times in bed with warmth on the first day. Water and vinegar, and do not wipe. Put it back in bed and cover well. On the second day you need do the same, but only 2 times, and then once every day. The same treatment for colds. fever accompanied by belching and vomiting, senile dizziness. One man, 74 years old, says, "I often have dizziness and severe heaviness in my head, legs. Often get colder, and when my head is healthy, I constantly feel pain in my stomach. I never have stool without the help of laxatives." The book My Hydrotherapy made me think about trying to be treated. Water. After 3 weeks, he recovered so much that he regretted transferring his studies and affairs to another. The water applications were as follows. First day, in the morning, top drenching with water and vinegar, then dousing over knees, warm foot in the evening. Bath with ash and salt, 14 minutes. Second day, in the morning, top pouring from a watering can, and then 5 minutes of walking on wet stones, after lunch. Cold sitz bath, 1 minute. The third day, walk on the water for 2 minutes in the morning, after that keep your hands up to your shoulders in the water, after lunch. Top douche, sitz bath in the evening. The fourth day, walk for 3 minutes in the water up to your knees in the morning, then keep your arms up to your shoulders in water for 2 minutes. After dinner, douche the back. Fifth day, douche the back in the morning, half bath in the afternoon, 1 minute. In this order, those. The same application of water in the following days. The dizziness disappeared completely, the stool was adjusted. The gases were eliminated, the general body heat was restored, in a word, the machine was put in order. Old man became fresh and cheerful, like youth. It may seem strange why we prescribed only one warm application to this deep old man. Water. The reason is clear, he was still strong enough, had a reserve of warmth in his body, otherwise it would be necessary to increase. It is the amount of heat by washing out of bed at night with warm water or water with vinegar. Once the amount of heat in the body is raised, after warm washings they switch to cold ones, old people. They are happy to change warm water to cold water, considering its effect to be better and more pleasant. One 78-year-old priest, rather stout, was so dizzy that he could not stand on legs, nor even look up. His appearance gave the impression that the poor old man was deprived of warmth in the body. Despite the advancing years, the old man freshened up, the dizziness passed, in a word, he became like the dying lamp, into which the oil was again poured. If the old man reads these lines, he will ask, how did this happen to him? That's how. On the first day, wrapping the whole body up to the armpits in a canvas soaked in a hot broth of hay dust 1.5 hour, after lunch a very warm washing of the whole body with water and vinegar. Second day, in the morning a foot steam bath 20 minutes, and now a short dousing with fresh water after lunch, complete washing, as on the first day. Third day, steam bath for the head 20 minutes, and now top douche. Fourth day, in the morning cold drenching of the upper parts of the body and knees, after lunch, a wet shirt on. Hour and a half. The fifth day, in the morning a warm foot bath with ash and salt, afternoon douche, top and knee. Since that time, alternately cold applications of water continued, in the morning douche, the upper and knees, after 2 hours, keep your hands in the water and walk on the water, after lunch, only top pouring. So, lasted about a week, and was done at night 1 or 2 complete washing, right out of bed, and back to bed. At home, to continue treatment, it is enough to walk on water 2 times a week and hold hands in the water up to the shoulders. Take a sitz bath once a week. You can also take a warm one. Inside, infusion of dill, yarrow and sage. Bowel pain. One priest, 45 years old, says, for 25 years I have suffered from persistent constipation, and for several years already. And stomach pains. About 8 years ago I was treated with cold water. Stomach condition after that. It got better, but the constipation did not stop. In 1895, more kidney suffering with excessive. The formation of acid and sand in the urine, against which the doctor prescribed great treatment for me, and after it 10 daytime treatment with Glauber's salt, which gave me very severe colonic catarrh. After I have already tried all kinds of means, they told me that my disease is incurable, and that it can be. Just make it easier. I was tormented by insomnia, loss of appetite, fatigue, heaviness in the legs, aversion to work, pain and pressure in the kidney area, and very severe constipation with great bloating and exertion. Abdomen, my feet are always cold, my head is hot, everything else sweated lightly and heavily. In this condition, I decided to try cold water treatment, against which I was so warned. This patient was prescribed the following: daily top douche, back douche, sedentary bath, in addition, as needed, a half bath, dousing the knees, walking on water. But best of all, the Spanish cloak, which had become his best friend, was in effect. After such 12 weeks of treatment, digestion has become good without a special diet. The patient's weight increased by 12 pounds. Brain suffering, heavy. One brewer, 33, had been seriously ill for 11 years. In May 1877, one morning, getting up from bed, suddenly fell almost unconscious and lay in this state for 2 hours. This was the beginning of a difficult typhus that lasted 6 months. Even then, he began to have daily dizziness, vomiting and fainting. The vertigo began with a pounding in the brain, and he fell. This state lasted for 5 to 10 minutes and repeated daily the 5th of August 10 times. After these 6 months, he again became capable of work, but only for 2 months. After that, the seizures began to recur so often and with such force that he should have been next 8. Stay in bed for months. During these 11 years, he had to lie for 6 to 8 months every year in the bed. The disease has intensified so much that attacks of dizziness and fainting, even in the intermediate time, repeated 2 to 3 times a day, especially after mental exertion, after quick movements with any turning of the head. There was always a pounding in the head before the seizure, and even if it was grabbed a table in the room or a tree in the yard, then he was so thrown here and there that he finally fell on the ground. At the same time, he did not lose consciousness, but only saw nothing. For 9 years, seizures were always accompanied by vomiting. Only in the last year has it stopped everything. This time, 10.5 years, the unfortunate man felt the pressure on the crown of his head, as if from a pound stone. For 5 years already, he has almost constant tinnitus and deafness of the right ear. For 9 years he could never sleep any more than for an hour or two due to a feeling of pressure and heaviness in the head. From May 1886 to October 1887 he lay in bed at the smallest intervals. X1 doctors who have it in continuation. His long illness was treated, and of which some recognized him incurable, forced him to accept a lot of drugs. Many of them were of the opinion that a crack had appeared in the skull due to some damage. A barrel had somehow fallen on the brewer's head, and that since that time a splinter has been pressing on the brain bones. This is what causes suffering itself. Some doctors considered it a chronic induration of the brain shell. I was of the opinion that he was suffering from a strong congestion of blood to the head, and accordingly I prescribed him the following uses of water: top douche, water walking, back douche, knee douche, and thighs, a steam foot bath, and a Spanish cloak. The results of this treatment, lasting from 28 July to September 2nd, were excellent. Already on the 5th day, the patient did not feel a feeling of pressure in the head. On the 2nd day, there was another seizure after prolonged mental exertion, writing a letter, but it was already the last seizure. Every day he got better and better. During the next, for 4 weeks he felt kind of renewed, so it was easy and good for him. His eyesight had also improved, and he could already sleep most of the night. Returning home completely healthy, he nevertheless continued doing one of the above water uses. Spine suffering. One 16-year-old boy had a curvature of the spine. For a long time, doctors treated him, but without any results. They sent him to the hospital, where they applied all kinds of straightening bandages. In the end, he had to leave the hospital on 2 crutches. The doctors decided that nothing else can be helped. One of the friends of this boy's father gave him my hydrotherapy. Father started washing his son with water and vinegar. It had such a beneficial effect on the patient that he could already walk, leaning only on a stick. Then he was brought to me in the hope that he is here, will be finally healed. The treatment lasted 17 days. After that, the patient walked like everyone else. At his age, if not so firmly, then still without a stick and without any pain. The treatment consisted of the following: a vest was made of coarse linen, the patient having moistened it in water with a decoction of oat straw. Put it on over the wet vest. He was covered with a dry blanket, and on top of all this still woolen blanket. All this was left for the whole night. They did this at first every evening, and then after day. In addition, the patient received daily 2 upper douches and 1 douche of the knees, or is he took a half bath and walked on the water. Further applications of water after these 17 days consisted of the following: weekly 2 half baths, 2 top pouring and once putting on the above described vest. Convulsions. I was called to the patient. Her whole body trembled, she was thrown up, now to the left, now to the right. The patient herself does not could speak, and therefore her mother told me the following: my daughter always has a terrible headache. She is experiencing pressure in the chest and stomach area. Hands and feet are always cold and covered with sticky sweat. My daughter has been married for 3 months. She was completely healthy for 10 weeks, after which all these phenomena, at first in a weak degree, and then all intensifying. She can eat almost nothing, except perhaps spoons of meat soup or coffee. Everything that she took as prescribed by doctors, including injections, in order to induce sleep. All this only worsened her situation. I advise the following: daily 2 times to put your feet up to your knees in cold water and at the same time wash them with a sponge or towel. Immediately after that, immerse your arms up to your shoulders in cold water for 1 minute and wash them also. Then cover hands and feet with something warm. Also take in the morning and in the evening 12 drops of chamomile tincture for 6 to 8 tablespoons of warm water. The patient had to eat from time to time 3 to 4 tablespoons of milk. After 12 days, the patient recovered so much that her appetite returned, the convulsions stopped. Pressing pains in the chest and abdomen disappeared in the same way as the headaches, arms and legs of steel. Warm. Further treatment was as follows: keep your feet in cold water every other day as described above. Wait twice a week a warm foot bath with ash and salt for 14 minutes and once a complete washing for a week, and then immediately go back to bed. Instead of chamomile drops, she took drops of wormwood and sage, 10 to 12 drops in warm water. The patient felt so good. After that she could do her homework again. To maintain health in the future. It was enough for her to wash herself with cold water twice a week. Half baths would still work. It is better. Articular rheumatism. One day a man came to me. He looked sickly. His complexion was unhealthy, with a yellow tinge. There are very few hairs on the head, almost 1/20th part. He was about 40 years old. He told me the following. I had frequent abdominal pains, accompanied by severe colic and diarrhea. After I had, there was a kidney disease, as determined by the doctors. When these unspeakable pains came, I literally twisted everything. Over the years this illness has passed, but instead of it I now have articular rheumatism. To me, it seems that now all the previously experienced sufferings have joined together and torment all my members. I accepted a lot of drugs, but there was no relief from them. God only knows how much I have suffered. To add that my legs were sweating a lot, the remedies which I took against it on the advice of many helped me. I used, at the insistence of the doctor, and mineral baths, but from them my illness only worsened. But the most painful of all suffering for me was the realization that my condition was not considered at all so bad that my sensitivity plays the main role here. The mystery of this patient is not difficult to guess. All instructions are given to us by the patient, we only have to make a conclusion. Yellowness, frequent bouts of colic, stop sweating of the legs, all this makes suggest some poisonous substance lurking, like a snake, in the body, before the snake only hissed, now rushes to the whole body, to all its members, and, with its bites, infects them with poison to the very joints, to the bone marrow. Complete healing is possible only if this poisonous substance is dissolved and completely isolated. The body, and if you strengthen the body so that such harmful juices could no longer form in it. And where can you buy an antidote to such a poison? Otherwise I would have paid dearly for it. For artificial means, especially when they are still new and unknown, they pay very dearly, but for the natural and the best, the means hardly even say to the Creator, Dio Curatios, thank you, Lord. To whiten the canvas, water and rays of the sun must penetrate right through the body of our patient with its yellowish skin. Also not a bleached canvas. Some applications of water are to inject water inside to dissolve raw those poisonous substances, others must form heat, which, like the sun, will draw out the dissolved. One more. And the lye sometimes renders the hostess a service when bleaching the linen, speeding it up. We can too use lye as a stronger solvent. We boil various plants, herbs, and so on in water. We prepare the finest lye for body whitening. But let's return to our patient. He first had to use a Spanish cloak, followed by steamed a bath for the head, followed by a strong wash, and then a foot steam bath. Both steam baths were replacing the best lye, believe me. The softer you are with the body, it will more easily withstand such treatment, and even itself will promote the release of harmful substances. After this the patient did a short wrap and, to strengthen the body, top and bottom douches. Using one of these uses on a daily basis, besides, still every night out of bed. Complete washing. He continued this for 3 weeks. In the 4th and 5th weeks, he took 2 half baths, 1 head and 1 foot steam bath and Spanish cloak, and on the 6th week, finally, 2 warm baths alternately with cold ones, 1 half bath and 1 top and bottom pouring. For the future, I advised him to do 2 full washings and a monthly warm bath without change. This time the water did not disappoint my expectations. A serious illness that no doubt could have been cause of the patient's early death disappeared completely. Cheerful appearance, moderate forces returned to him. The voice sounded the same as before. One man, about 40 years old, had such severe rheumatic pains in his left leg that he could walk, yes. And even then not very long, only leaning on a stick. At times he also felt pain in his arms and shoulders. He already tried many means, but to no avail. Finally I began to be treated with water. After 6 days, you will feel. He felt better, continued treatment with water and recovered completely. He did the following. For 6 days, 2 upper douches and 2 knee douches daily, wrap once a week. Walking on water twice daily to calves from 1 to 3 minutes. Push your back every day and walk around grass. After these 6 days of pouring over the upper parts of the body and pouring over the knees alternately with a half bath. Lasts 1 minute. A young man, 23 years old, says, for 2 years, not a single day has passed so that I do not feel pain. At first the pain appeared in the back, where I felt a burning sensation and tingling, sometimes very strong, sometimes weak. Little by little, the pain spread and finally spread to the right thigh. Often at night I cannot sleep. Even for 1 hour, now I am tormented by a fever, then I am so cold that I am shivering. I have already addressed many doctors, but it's useless. I was also given injections, after which the pain decreased for a short time, but then appeared even more forcefully. The doctors did not help me, and I turned to the healers. I was rubbed, washed, alcohol, but whatever he did not help me in the least. Now I want to try to heal with water. He did the following. Every morning at 8 o'clock top pouring 3 to 4 watering cans of cold water. At 10 o'clock pouring over the thighs. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon pouring over the thighs. Walking on water in the evening. This he did on the first day. On the second day, in the morning, walking on water at 10 o'clock, pouring over the thighs, at 2 o'clock, dousing the back, in the evening at 5 o'clock, sitz bath. On the third day, in the morning, half bath, at 10 o'clock, top douche, at 2 o'clock, douche the thighs, at 5 o'clock. Walking on the grass. On the fourth day, in the morning, pouring over the thighs, at 10 o'clock, half bath, at 2 o'clock, pouring over the back, and in the evening, walking on water. He did this for 12 days and recovered. To strengthen the body, greatly weakened from stress. Denier, the recovered patient had to take 1 to 2 half baths and walk on water 1 to 2 times. Articular rheumatism chronic. Count N. Suffered from rheumatism for 35 years. In 1854, he was on the waters in Aachen, which benefited him. During the War of 1870–71, thanks to his bivouac life, he again felt rheumatic pains in everything. The body is even stronger than before. And this time he was helped by the waters in Aachen. But soon the disease again returned. The patient turned to famous doctors, but without consequences. He visited the waters again in Abeling and Aachen. This time he was taking hot baths there, which greatly weakened him. Finally, seeing that all in vain, he decided to try another hydrotherapy. On June 20, 1887, the patient, after having spent 2 months in bed, came to me with rheumatism in everything. Body, in the joints of the legs, arms, knees, etc. The right hand is severely swollen from fingers to elbow, joints of steel. Completely motionless, the knees were also swollen so much that they could not be moved. Good. A built, strong man was completely weakened by a long and painful illness. The treatment was as follows. 1.2 times a week wrap from armpits to legs for 1.5 hours, and the sheet was moistened in a warm water, 37 degrees, with a decoction of oat straw, hay dust and pine needles. 2. Every morning and evening a wrap for 1-2 hours of a swollen hand with a handkerchief dipped in this broth. 3. Weekly 2 full herbal baths with triple reverse. 4. 4 times a week shawl for 1 hour. Within 2 weeks, a significant improvement was noticeable. After that, the patient was already at home doing the following. Blowing. 1. Hand wrap as before. 2. Weekly full herbal bath with change. 3. 3 times a week cold half bath from 1/2 to 1 minute. 4. Sit bath for 2 minutes 3 to 5 times a week. Thanks to this treatment, the swelling of the hand and knee completely disappeared and the ability to nest to movement. To fully recover, he still took the following in September 1887. 1. Warm half bath, wrapping hands with boiled hay dust and now cold. Hand washing. 2. Weekly 3 to 4 times a half bath. 3. Weekly triple change herbal bath. 4. 4 times a week top douche. The results of this treatment were excellent. The pain in the joints went away and they became mobile again. The general state of the body and the mood of the spirit of the Count have become excellent since that time. He's so good at himself. Felt that he could walk for hours without getting tired. Until then, he, a passionate hunter, had to give up hunting for their illness. In the same autumn, to the surprise of the whole society, he spent 9 days. To be constantly healthy after that, you need to use some kind of application every day. Water for hardening the body, half bath, full bath, or walking on the grass. Sukotka. Dryness differs from consumption in that in the latter, destruction begins from one organ, the lung, throat, etc., while with dryness the whole organism is a wreck. Usually they look for the cause of dryness in kidneys, abdomen, etc. For the most part, it is impossible to determine it before an autopsy. We are deceived by the most sure signs. One rather plump man was distinguished by enviable health. His lifestyle and diet were perfectly normal. Suddenly he began to notice that his strength and fullness were disappearing. He started to get strong dizziness and he did not dare to stand still without support. The worst thing was that when he walked or stood, his legs did not feel a firm support. At 6 weeks, the patient lost 72 pounds. This beautiful, a healthy man staggered from side to side like a broken reed or a dried up lifeless tree. Medicines did not help. The patient was expecting an imminent death. In this state and on the building he appeared to me, I just didn't recognize him, although he was a good friend of mine. I myself doubted the possibility of it. Cure, but still advised him to try the last resort, to turn to water. It was necessary to strengthen the body. Every day the patient walked barefoot 2 to 3 times on wet grass or on wet stones. He put on top and bottom compresses daily and wore a Spanish cloak once a week. In addition, every week he took 2 half baths and 1 short body wrap. Then instead of half bath, full cold baths for 1 minute and warm, with 2 changes, each once in week. In addition, once a week complete washing. To completely cure the disease and exclude the possibility of its recurrence, I advised 1. A full bath, 1 douche of the upper body and knees, and from time to time a Spanish cloak. Already after the first week, the loss of strength stopped and the restoration of strength began. I have reduced the portion of beer From 5 glasses to 2, food advised nutritious, but simple. After 2 months of treatment, the patient was perfectly healthy and returned to his usual activities. Now he is still strong and healthy. 2. One mother of the family, healthy and booming, in a short time lost her health and strength. She has already been sentenced. Rushed to death, since no means helped her. Then she resorted to the help of water. For 2 weeks, she wore a wet shirt for 1 hour 2 times a week and took half bath. Her strength increased somewhat, then 1 short wrap and 1 full washing a week, the last she had to do in the morning, getting out of bed and returning again after this to bed. This woman has completely recovered. It may sometimes be noticed that such patients seem to take too much food, so that their body cannot distribute and process it correctly, therefore harmful consequences appear. Obesity, blood stasis, accumulation of painful juices, etc. Proper hydrotherapy regulates. Taken, removes unnecessary, corrects blood circulation and strengthens the body. Another case is possible: food is accepted, but not absorbed properly, organs are weak, sluggish, are inactive and incapable of work, they are weakened in functions. It is clear that here too, various disorders of the body. Cut off the suction roots of any plant and it will die. These roots are similar to our organs. Water refreshes, strengthens them, the organs start moving again from the water. Revive, restore their functions. Rashes. By rashes, I mean all those unnamed rashes that appear quickly on the skin and disappear just as quickly. Usually no one pays attention to them, but they can sometimes become very unpleasant, even painful for the chest, back and other parts of the body. Rashes do not prevent people from doing their own thing for many years. However, I know people suffering from fits of insanity with the disappearance of this kind of rash. I even know the case. Frenzy. From the remedies recommended for the treatment of lichen, the rash always reappears, and the seizures stopped. So the rash is not as trifling as it seems. If you start a rash and not be clean, it can easily to form insanity, dryness, consumption, liver disease, kidney disease, and other serious consequences. For anyone suffering from a rash, I advise in advance, as long as there are none of the severe consequences mentioned. This disease gradually performs several light hydrotherapy procedures every week, one after day, in the following order: complete washing with cold water, Spanish cloak, short wrap. If at first the rash intensifies, you do not need to be afraid. This is an excellent proof of the action of water, and the more diligently one must continue to apply it. Whoever follows this advice will see for himself that the rash will then completely disappear. The impartial reader can judge for himself what to choose for cleansing the skin, whether disgusting ointments under the loud names of wonderful balm, milk of beauty, or pure, clear water.